All right, guys, get ready. We're talking about stress today. Day 3, motivation, emotion, and personality. Stressed out. Learning how not to be stressed out and get some positive coping mechanisms. All right. So up first, what I want you guys to do, first activity, like we did before, I have the Google Classroom thread up. So comment 3 things that cause you the most stress in your life. So what are your stressors in life that are causing you to be stressed out? So what I had you just identify, those are stressors. So things that cause you to feel stress and anxiety, those are stressors. So a stressful stimulus or condition demanding an adaptation. And then stress, that is your physical and mental. So we talked about physiological, like sweaty hands, heartbeat, whatever, and then mental, cognitive, how you think about things. So your physical and mental response to a challenging or threatening situation, which is just a stressor. So remember, stressor is just a challenging or threatening situation or stimulus or condition. And there's 3 types of stressors that are important to know. You have one is a catastrophe, so think like earthquake or something big that happened. Significant life change, so maybe moving, going to college, new school, an older person, ending a relationship, getting a divorce. And then the final one, 3, would be daily hassle. So just your day-to-day kind of stressors, like going to work, having a paper due, little things here and there that kind of just bring stress to our life. So going off of this idea of kind of the more daily stress that we face, so not some huge thing maybe like an earthquake, but kind of more things we're facing typically, is Lewin's motivational conflicts theory. So he's saying these are kind of different situations that we encounter in our life that bring us stress. So he kind of groups them into 4 different things that could make a situation stressful. So the first kind of situation that humans might find themselves in is an approach situation. So this is where you have to make a choice between 2 attractive or positive choices. So we see this all the time. If you want to go, you seniors going off campus for lunch, should we go to Qdoba? Should we go to Culver? Should we go to My Pizza? So Qdoba or My Pizza, 2 attractive choices. You have to decide which ones you want to go to. So it's a difficult, stressful decision, even though it's 2 positive things. To make that decision still provokes some stress or conflict. Remember, choice is something that a lot of us are indecisive. Any kind of choice, whether it's good or bad, might bring some stress and anxiety. So then the second one he identifies is avoidance. So this is where you have to make a choice between 2 unattractive options. So here we have something like deciding whether to take out the trash or do the dishes, right? There are 2 things that you don't want to do, and you have to choose between them. So still going to bring you stress, but obviously you don't want to do either of those things. And then third one is approach avoidance. So this is where you have a single goal and you have to decide if you want to pursue it. But this goal has both positive and negative aspects to it. So my example is take like a rom-com movie. You get your dream job, you got offer, you get to travel the world and like go work for some fancy news magazine in Paris, whatever. But then you have to move away from the love of your life. Oh no. So you have a single goal, which is that dream job, but it has both attractive and unattractive aspects. So it's one thing, but it has positive and negatives, and you have to decide what you're going to do. And then finally, we have the multiple or double approach. They have different names for it. Multiple or double approach or avoidance. So this is when you have 2 things that you have to decide between. So approach avoidance was just one thing. You have to decide whether you're doing it or not. Multiple or double approach avoidance is 2 things that you have to decide. And then each of these things has positive and negative aspects to it. So my example, again, seniors or anyone looking at colleges, would be choosing between 2 colleges. So let's take, I really liked Marquette, and I ended up going to Marquette, right? But then I also liked, I think, Loyola University in Chicago. And then I said, okay, well, Loyola's really pretty, but it's super expensive. Marquette's cheaper, but it's not on Lake Michigan or whatever I wanted. So there's pros and cons to each college that you're looking at. And you have to decide between the two things. So now we're going to talk about how we measure stress. And let's go back, throw it back to Unit 1 with operational definitions. Remember, I talked about the importance of being specific and how we're stating the variables in a study. So operational definition, that's just how we're measuring a variable, so an independent or dependent variable. So if you said that the independent, or let's say one of the variables is your mood, you need to have a mood analysis test that's going to be specific so you can repeat it if you're trying to do that study somewhere else with a different psychologist. Or say you were trying to do a test on academic achievement, you need to specify how you're measuring academic achievement. Is it with their grades, their GPA? Is it with their ACT, SAT? Is it with their AP exam? So how are you measuring that? So one way that psychologists measure the variable of stress, if they're looking at that in an experiment, is through something like a stress scale. So this is the Holmes and Rahe stress scale. So you guys, I posted a link to this on our little online learning worksheet thing and on Google Classroom. So what I'd like you guys to do is to take this Holmes and Rahe stress scale. And it basically gives you different events that happen in your life, and it gives a point allotment towards that event. So say like breaking up with a significant other would be like 30 points or something. And then the more points you get, so the more events that you've encountered in your life that are stressful, the higher your stress score. And then it tells you kind of what range you're falling in, if it's like healthy, unhealthy, significantly unhealthy, and if you're at risk for any stress-related illnesses. So what I'd like you guys to do is just go ahead, take that for yourself, and see how where your score falls and how it's potentially impacting your health. So the question that arises is kind of, where does this stress response originate? Why do humans have this stress? We don't like having stress, right? It's something that's provokes anxiety, and we don't like that. So where does this response originate from? And why does it seem to be getting worse in more recent years, right? You hear constantly like, oh, I have anxiety, I'm stressed, blah, blah, blah. So why does it seem like things are getting worse? And where does this come from? So one theory is the evolutionary theory. So evolutionary psychologists, they think that our stress response to perceived threats activates thoughts, feelings, behavior, and physiological arousal that would normally be something that's adaptive and promoting survival. So if you think back to like cavemen days, it was really important in an adaptive behavior for us to have stress because it helped protect us. So if we had a stress response to seeing something like a snake or seeing something like some wild boar coming to kill us, right? We needed that. It would alert us, put the fight, flight, or fight response on, and then get us to safety. So it was a very important thing then, but obviously now, flash forward to our current day and age, we don't have those same kind of issues. We're in a different environment. So now stress has kind of become a little bit maladaptive in some ways. But why is it increasing? It's because we have more stimulation in the environment now that's causing us to have stress. So think of the technology, think of all the social interaction, all the things that are stimulating us in our environment that could cause us stress. There's a lot more that's going on now than back in the day. And back in the day, your stress, it was very short term. So for example, you saw a snake, ran away, boom, problem solved, it's over. You can have the parasympathetic nervous system calm you down. But now our stressors in our current life are kind of long term. Our job, our relationships, things we're doing long term. So our stress never kind of turns off. So you have that kind of continual stress building up and building up. So evolutionary psychologists are saying it's kind of this leftover, protective, adaptive trait that's now kind of becoming a little bit maladaptive for us. And then with that, again, just a refresher, flight or fight response is just our internal process that prepares an organism to struggle or escape, flee a dangerous situation. And remember, it's the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system that turns on that gas pedal to get you running away. And then you have the parasympathetic division, which is going to calm you down, the parachute calming you down. And then an interesting thing here that evolutionary psychologists also bring up is this Tendon-Befriend model. So this is basically a stress model that says that people in general, but specifically women, are more biologically predisposed to respond to stress by nurturing and protecting offspring and seeking social support. So when girls are stressed off, often you see that there is this evolution adaptive component that they want to socialize and have that emotional support with others. And that kind of goes back from, again, think back way back when, with men being hunter-gatherers, women providing the nurture support. So then another thing is the stress appraisal approach. So the stress appraisal approach, they just kind of disagree with some of the evolutionary approach to why stress happens. They're saying it's much more cognitive. So they disagree with it being evolutionary and adaptive. They're saying our stress has much more to do with how we're cognitively appraising or interpreting stressors, so stressful things in our environment. So they're saying it's all about how we respond and interpret that stressor. So here's an example from the book. They said that there's a tough math test, and you have the cognitive appraisal, how you're interpreting it and judging that situation. So they're saying we either have a positive or negative kind of coping response to that stressor, depending on how we're assessing it cognitively in our heads. So if we think about the math test as, yikes, I'm scared, this is beyond me, then we're going to be stressed and it's not going to be helpful and it's going to be a negative outcome. But if we accept it as a challenge and we want to do well and overcome it, then we're going to be in that right state, that just right state of arousal, and be focused and do a good job. So stress appraisal is all about kind of your cognitive interpretation of stress, is determining how you're going to overcome it and whether it's going to be a good kind of stress that's kind of keeping you alert. And like we talked about the basketball game, you want that just right level, keeping you alert enough to be focused, versus if you interpret it poorly, then you're just going to be overcome with stress. So the most important theory of how our bodies respond to stress comes from this guy named Hans Selye, and he created what is called the general adaptation syndrome. So for AP, we really want to know this. This is probably one of the most important. This, along with Lewin's motivational conflicts theory, are the two most important things I want you guys to get out of this lesson. So Hans Selye's general adaptation syndrome says that there's 3 phases in our kind of stress response long term. So this isn't just like short-term stress, like you saw something really scary, stressed, boom, it's over. This is like long-term stress of like a stressful workplace, stressful family situation, long-term stress in your life. So what he says is there's phase 1, in which you have kind of that initial alarm reaction to stress, where your flight or fight response is going off, your sympathetic nervous system is activated, and then this transitions into your resistance phase. So this is where you're trying to kind of fight off that stressor still. Your body's still producing those hormones, the ones that are trying to fight off the kind of stress that you're enduring. But you also have the adaptive component. So you're still working to fight it off, but your body starts to kind of get used to it and adapt to living with this stress for a long time. So this is the resistance phase. And then we have phase 3, which is the exhaustion phase. So your body tried to cope with it, tried to adapt and fight it for as long as it can, but then there comes a point where you just can't take it anymore. And this is when you become immunocompromised, you're going to get sick, you're just worn out, beaten up, you can't do it anymore, and you're much more likely to get some kind of stress-related illness. So again, phase 1, alarm. Fight or flight response begins. Sympathetic nervous system, the gas pedal, is activated. Then hypothalamus, remember I talked about taking temps, regulating your body. Hypothalamus then, when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, communicates with the endocrine system, the pituitary gland, the head honcho of the endocrine system, and tells it to release hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to get this fight or flight arousal response going. So now we move on to phase 2, which is again resistance, jab, punch, uppercut. You're gonna fight it off, the stressor, but now you're gonna start adapting to it. So again, we're talking about long-term stress here. So this is the part where your body kind of tries to adapt. It's fighting it off, but it's getting used to it more. It's adapting, and you're living with this stressor now. But you're still releasing things like cortisol, so your body's still really working and putting in a lot of effort, and the stress is kind of, going to take a toll on you eventually because your body's working overtime in this state of arousal, this fight or flight response. And we know that we don't want to be in this fight or flight response for a long time. It's not natural. Your heart rate's going, you're tensing up. It's not something that's natural for humans to be in for prolonged periods of time. So this is what happens now because we spent so much time in this phase of being super high stress. We're going to go through the exhaustion phase now. So we just depleted our battery, all our resources, all our hormones. You just can't do it anymore. You are just physically exhausted. Boom, you can't deal with the stress anymore. So the stressor is still present, but your resources are depleted, your battery is shut, and now your immune system is just completely compromised and weakened. So this is where you open the door for things like heart disease, heart attacks, diabetes, muscle problems because of tension, infectious diseases because your immune system compromised, and then even in some cases, death. So again, stress could literally kill you. That's dramatic, but prolonged stress is definitely not good for our body. And the big thing that they want us to know with stress is that, again, it kind of leads to cardiac problems. That's kind of the biggest thing is you see heart issues as a result of stress and buildup. And then this is kind of an interesting segue for when you guys get back from spring break. We're going to be talking about personality. But we'll touch on this a little bit now, which is interesting, and how different personality types are more or less likely to experience stress. So for example, if you've probably heard this being referred to as type A or type B person. So type A people are very competitive, very driven, kind of aggressive, hostile. So again, this is a spectrum. So you could be more type A in that you're like very competitive, very time urgent, very want everything together. But you might not have that super hostile, aggressive component. It could be that spectrum. You're not going to be all the way one way or another. And then type B is complete opposite. You're relaxed, you're chill, you're patient, easygoing, calm. So you're not going to freak out. The funny story with this is my roommates in college actually called me Ange B because I was very low-key and chill. And I'd always come home and sit on our little butterfly chair and put my feet up and eat my little hummus and crackers. And they called me Ange B because I was very type B, very relaxed and easygoing. But the big thing, you can see my little memes I posted. So this dog, after the smallest inconvenience, this dog freaks out. So that would be type A. You're very time urgent. You're not very patient. But then look, our type B friend here, everything's fine. He's just chilling. He's very patient, easygoing. He's not going to let a little thing bug him. And again, you could fall anywhere on the spectrum. You're not clearly one or clearly the other. But they find that if you are really, really a type A person, you're more likely to develop coronary heart disease, which is the clogging of the heart muscle that could, provide for things like a heart attack. So type A people were much, much more likely in research to have a heart attack than type B people. And this is kind of the big things tied with this, with type A people, are anger that they're experiencing and pessimism. So kind of having a negative, bad outlook on life. So now, how do we cope with our stress? Two ways that psychologists kind of categorize these would be with problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. So problem-focused coping is when you reduce stress by changing kind of the stressor. So you're going to combat the stressor, the things that's causing you problems, head on. You're going to tackle it head on. So you're changing the events or stressors that are causing you problems. So this could be something like, you're problem solving, whatever the issue is that's causing you stress, you're going to combat it head on. Time management, let's say that you're stressed about your assignments, you're a procrastinator. You could fix that stress by managing your time better. Or let's say your friends are causing you problems. This could be cutting out the toxic people in your life, right? That would be problem-focused coping. You're just getting to the root of the problem and cutting it out there. But sometimes this isn't always possible, right? There's things that you can't really help. Your workplace, sometimes you can't really help how people are going to act if it's stressful or something. So this is where emotion-focused coping comes in. So this is when we can't change a stressful situation, but we're going to respond by trying to help our own emotional needs. So you're not really fixing the problem, but you're trying to fix your emotional state and try and do something to help you. So this could be healthy or sometimes unhealthy, depending on what you're doing. So again, you're not fixing the problem, but you're just trying to help alleviate how you're feeling about it. So this could be distraction. So maybe you're gonna go do an activity that you like. Go for a bike ride. Go relax. Watch some TV shows that you enjoy. You're just trying to distract from the stressful thing in your life for a little bit. You could talk with others. Emotional support. Remember, we said tend and befriend. It's important to have emotional support. So this could be reaching out to other people. Eating or drinking, right? Sometimes that's not the most. Obviously, I love a good ice cream when I'm stressed out, but eating or drinking alcohol, doing drugs, probably not the most healthy thing for when we're stressed out, right? But other things could be more healthier. So something like meditation, mindfulness, prayer, that would be something that's proven to kind of help us and be more of a healthy coping mechanism. And then exercise, like I said. So what you guys are going to be doing now is I made a classroom Google Doc of how you cope with stress. So on our class Google Doc, what I want you guys to do is comment some of the healthy, right? So we're not talking about like drugs and alcohol here. What are some of the healthy ways that you cope with stress? So let's make a class brainstorm, see if we can give each other some inspiration. And then in a parentheses next to it, I'd like you to write a P if it's a problem-focused coping, or an E if it's an emotion-focused coping. So go ahead and you can think of some ways and put that on the Google Doc. I put an example. I think I said I enjoy listening to my Sound of Music soundtrack when I'm stressed out, probably as a way to kind of distract from my problems, more of an emotion-focused coping technique. All right. So just to recap, the main things I really want us to take away here are knowing the basic definitions of stress, and then knowing, where is it here? Knowing Lewin's motivational conflicts theory. Those come on the AP exam a lot, so those are good to know. And I have some practice for, very easy practice where you guys are coming up with those on your own for homework. And then knowing the general adaptation syndrome, 3 parts of that is also very important for AP exam. I put some practice questions for our exit slip with those as well. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's lesson. I think it's very applicable to our lives. We find that young adults, teenagers are probably the most stressed out age kind of generation that we know of. For a variety of reasons, you guys can brainstorm that for yourselves. But I think it is something that talking about good coping mechanism for stress is important. So what I'd like you guys to do for homework is complete Lewin's motivation conflict worksheet. So you're just taking his 4 different motivational conflicts and then providing examples from your own life of those. Then you can read mods 55 through 56 over break. And then we're going to have a vocab check up to mods 56 when you get back from break. And with the vocab check, it could be a paper copy that you're taking a picture of and turning in on Classroom, or it could be the online copy. Remember I said it's best to do things by hand just because psychology has proven that we remember better that way. But I understand in this tough circumstance, it's totally fine if you guys do it online. And then finally, we have an extra credit opportunity. You could get 10 points of extra credit. So it might be nice for you guys who want to like have that grade on the cusp and get it up a little bit. So find 10 examples of psychology in your daily life. So remember, just like when I did my little challenge with the learning unit, I said here, I took a picture of myself watering my plants. And I said, I water my plants to prevent them from dying. Negative reinforcement because I'm preventing something bad, my plant's dying. And it's going to reinforce the behavior of myself watering the plants. So choose 10 vocab words and then take a picture of something in your daily life that connects to psychology, connects to that vocab word. So do that and you can get 10 points of extra credit. How beautiful. So go ahead, enjoy your spring break, you guys, whatever you're doing. Now I'm going to be a little bit bored, so do the extra credit if you're feeling bored. Miss you guys. So enjoy your break, complete this, and I will see you in a week.